morning. Is this on? It will be in a minute. Oh, there we go. Good morning and welcome to Allen Avenue Unitarian Universalist Church's in-person and online worship. My name is Ann Packard and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. Our mission calls us to celebrate diversity, encourage spiritual growth, and promote social responsibility while we travel and care for the earth. Each month, Allen Avenue supports a nonprofit organization whose mission aligns with our Unitarian Universalist principles. The Share the Plate recipient for December is the Minister's Discretionary Fund. The Minister's Discretionary Fund is at the heart of our common ministry. It is a visible demonstration of our care for each other. Your generous gifts allow the minister to provide assistance to members of our church community or of the greater Portland community who are experiencing difficult times financially. If you are struggling with your finances in these challenging times, please contact Reverend Donna. For those at home, if you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. This morning's service about how the light gets in is presented by Allen Avenue's Worship Committee. Lay-led worship is a tradition at this and many other UU societies. At Allen Avenue, this thing is tight. It's really a tight one. At Allen Avenue, the Worship Committee either sponsors or presents one such service a month. On most other Sundays, worship is led by our minister, the Reverend Donna Dolham. We're so glad you've joined us. And now, we will center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the bell.
Our words for chalice lighting are by Atticus Palmer. We call this light before us in hope that we may always remain a strong community, working together to make the world a better place. When we are grieving or sad, when we are challenged, when we need help, this flame guides us out of the darkness. When we are cheerful, when we celebrate, when we accomplish a great task, when we return to a place that makes us happy, the chalice reminds us to share our happiness with others.
This year, we're lighting an Advent wreath for the 4 Sundays leading up to Christmas. As Unitarian Universalists, it's valuable for us to reconsider and reinterpret the traditions of our ancestors. Our UU faith grows from Christian roots. Some UUs identify as Christians, others don't. We also have among us Jewish UUs who are celebrating Hanukkah this week, UU Buddhists, UU Humanists, UU Pagans, and Unitarian Universalists who don't see a need for any hyphens or modifiers. Together we grow and change as we share our insights and struggles in response to our spiritual practices. Last week, we lit the first candle for hope. Today, we'll relight the candle of hope and we'll add a candle for peace. As we prepare for a new era of justice and reconciliation free from violence and coercion, we light this candle to know that peace is possible. We give thanks for those who witness for a world made whole with all her people one. Blessed be and amen. Good morning. My name is Denise Curry, and I'm a member of the worship committee. Here is where you can lay it down. Lay down all that you have carried, the weight of the world that has rounded your back, leaving you aching and exhausted. Here is where healing begins, where burdens are set down and alongside one another's, their magnitude does not seem as great. Here is where the door is thrown open and the light can lift away the shadows, and what was hidden can now be seen. Here is where you can rest, where nothing is expected but that you bring all of who you are into the presence of the holy and of this loving community. Let us worship together.
And good morning. I am Rick Kimball, and I promised to get a haircut soon. People have asked. But my barber had some family challenges and had to postpone the haircut until next Saturday. And that's when the light that we speak of today will shine onto my scalp. But I wander off subject. Let me do what I'm supposed to do. As a longtime member of the worship committee, I decided early in 2020 that I should offer a summer service on the life and the work of the fascinating Canadian singer and songwriter Leonard Cohen. We would have a wonderful time interspersing our own words and music with videos of Cohen singing songs like his famous anthem, which tells us to forgive and accept the imperfections of self and world, because there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Then came the pandemic. There went the service, and there went the crack in my plan that copyright law would not allow us to put online the Cohen creations we could have presented in the sanctuary. The crack was fatal to my summer service, but it lets the light shine in today at this service, which is not, by the way, about Cohen or his music, but which provides a forum for members of the worship committee to share their own reflections and ruminations, responding to those great Cohen lines saying not to worry about the breakage. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. If, in this process, a trace of light begins to flicker through a crack in your own life, then blessed be. We begin with the thoughts of Anna Noyes Benoit.
Good morning, and thank you for being here. I am Anna Noyes Benoit and a member of the worship committee with pronouns she, her, and hers. We did title this month's service using part of Leonard Cohen's refrain from his song Anthem, which goes, "Ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering. There is a crack in everything." That's how the light gets in. Here at A2U2, Dale rings the bells to center ourselves and mark the beginning of worship. Before the modern age of mass communication, bells rang to announce the time, to celebrate, to warn, or to mark a loss. In Portland, bells rang out from City Hall and church steeples. People stopped to listen, and their message was understood, that it might be an emergency, the start of a service, or just the current time. But they provided critical information. The bells, like an alarm clock, were a wake-up call saying, pay attention to this, the yin and the yang of bells alerting to both danger and opportunity. Poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow wrote The Bells of Christmas Day in December of 1863. He wrote his famous poem reflecting in part the despair he felt after his son Charlie was shot in the Civil War. He wrote, "The cannon thundered in the south, the carols drowned. There is no peace on earth," I said, "for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth." But he ends with this, "The bells ringing more loud and deep, the wrong shall fail, the right prevail." Are these the same bells that Cohen urges us to ring? Both Cohen and Longfellow, writing nearly 200 years apart, chose to respond to their feelings of despair with an alert and a plea for action. They shared the symbol of bells with their audience as both an alarm and an image of hope. Can we choose to remain hopeful in the face of distressing and discouraging personal and world events? If the answer is yes, how do we escape the sometimes strong urge to stay in bed and pull up the covers? Psychologists recommend taking what steps you can and looking for role models. A great role model, in my view, is Brian Anderson, the well-known author of Just Mercy, an attorney who, in spite of spending much of his time working with people, some of whom are children, in very hopeless situations. Although his clients are in jail and prisons, he seems to remain energetic and hopeful. He credits his grandmother with instilling values and beliefs in his abilities from an early age. He also states that to remain hopeful, we need to believe in things we cannot see. We cannot see faith, and we cannot see hope. We have to believe our criminal justice system can and will change. We have to believe that it's possible to stop the devastating consequences of climate change. And we have to believe that war and nuclear proliferation can be stopped. Or to quote another musical reference from the spiritual and civil rights anthem, "Eye on the Prize," "The only thing we ever did wrong was stay in the wilderness too long. The only thing we ever did right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eye on the prize, hold on." On a recent walk, I passed by a church at noon, unexpectedly, and stopped to listen as the bell struck the hour. I began to move on, but was treated to a bell concert as song filled the air. It was unexpected and magical. As the winter light fades and we wait for spring with the promise of renewal, may we manifest hope. Whatever the prize, ring the bells that still can ring and hold on.
Silas, bound in jail, had no money for to go their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Paul and Silas began to shout, the jail door opened and they walked on out. Keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Hold on, hold on, keep your eyes on the prize, hold on. Freedom's name is mighty sweet, soon one day we're gonna meet.
I'm Susie Hubley, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a member of the worship committee. When I was considering this topic, my first thought was of the pandemic. To be truthful, I feel guilty even thinking that the pandemic has allowed light of any kind to enter. How can a scourge that has killed more than 5 million people be anything other than the most monstrous of tragedies? But I'm seeing that even in the midst of a devastating pandemic, my experience of life can be nuanced. I believe in basic goodness, though it's been a bit challenged the past few years. I also believe in basic horribleness, and I think they can both exist in a given situation with all sorts of tonalities in between. And if I can get myself to look, I can see some light coming through the crack. I have to acknowledge that my circumstances in the pandemic are really fortunate. I haven't had to deal with the really hard aspects of it since I'm retired and have no one depending on me except 2 cats. Also, for the first time in my life, my basic nature has dovetailed well with life's demands. I'm an introvert. I'm not antisocial, but I'm also not naturally social. I find pleasure and meaning in being involved and connecting with people from church and elsewhere, but it takes me forever to feel comfortable in a group. Zoom has been like a buffer. It's enabled me to do much more than my social anxiety would allow me to do if everything were done in person. This may just mean I'm catering to my neuroses, but I choose to believe that Zoom is a tool that's allowing me to bridge that fearsome crevasse of getting to know people and learning new tasks. So I feel more productive, more useful to an organization that I care a lot about, and also more profoundly affected by my involvement with that organization. That helps me feel that my life has spiritual meaning. One change I've made in the pandemic is to join the Dawn Redwood meditation group. The pandemic was helping me see that I needed connection with others who lean toward Buddhism, and I needed to get my meditation practice going again. The fact that the group was meeting on Zoom was that little nudge I needed in order to get myself there, and the group has become an important part of my spiritual life, and I have started meditating again. Another change I've made that kind of happened naturally is letting my car sit in the driveway. I think I filled the tank about once a month, maybe less, in the last year and a half. And I'd like to keep it that way, even when things get in person and busy again. For 20 years, I commuted 35 miles each way, always thinking about the damage my driving was doing to our environment. So, as small a contribution as it may be, I do feel motivated to keep my driving at a bare minimum. And the pandemic was a catalyst for that. I've felt my share of despair and loneliness this past year and a half. It'll be a huge relief when this ends. But as limiting and confining as the pandemic has been, it has also given me permission to live more fully in some important ways. Thank you.
My name is Erica Bartlett. I'm the chair of the worship committee, and this is titled Gift of Life. This past year and a half has opened cracks in all our lives. Some were disruptions we had in common, like having to change our habits for grocery shopping and seeing others. But many of the ways our lives were cracked were very individual. For me, some of this happened when I started thinking about my Aunt Gail's death by suicide, even though that happened years ago now. 2 things brought her to mind more than usual last year. The first was my birthday, when I turned 44, the age she was when she died. At that point, it had been 14 years since her death, which coincidentally was also the age difference between us. And I wished so much that I could have a chance to talk to her again. I feel like I could understand her much better now than I did when I was 30. I also would have liked hearing her views on our current strange times. She had quite a way with words, often including unapologetically colorful language. But I started thinking about her even more when I used some of my extra time to clean my filing cabinet, because that's when I found the Gift of Life letter. If you're not familiar with these, you get a Gift of Life letter when someone has died whose organs are donated. The letter tells you a little about the people who received organs from your loved one. For my mom, only her corneas could be donated because of her cancer. But my Aunt Gail had been physically healthy. The Donor Recovery Network was able to use her heart, liver, lungs, and both her kidneys. In all, the lives of 5 adults and 1 infant were improved as a result of those organ donations. Reading that letter usually brings me comfort, but last year it made me start thinking about those people who had carried parts of Gail, wondering if they were still alive, if they were coping okay with the pandemic, if having gotten an organ donation made them more susceptible to COVID. I also couldn't help thinking of all those who lost a loved one during the pandemic, but couldn't be with them at the end, or couldn't even have a gathering or memorial service. I worried too about those like my aunt who struggled with mental health issues and how they were managing when forced into isolation and uncertainty. All that brought me to tears, and it didn't help that last summer it had been months since I'd been able to give anyone a hug or see my family without knowing when that would end. Letting myself acknowledge those feelings didn't make them go away, but they did help to crack me open, letting the light in. Afterward, the world looked a little brighter again. In that new light, I realized that even though I can't see my aunt again, or my mom, I can use their memories to help make other choices. I can let myself acknowledge the sorrow, but also find moments of joy, to celebrate those I still have in my life, to practice kindness and compassion. And when I'm tempted to close myself off again, to seal up the cracks, I remember that doing so doesn't help me or anyone else. Instead, I try to stay open to let the light in, to welcome it as my own gift of life, and let it be a reminder to embrace that life while I can. It's the tradition of Allen Avenue UU Church to invite you to share your important joys and sorrows aloud, so that all of us might carry the burden or join in the celebration. We invite you to share those things that are personal to you and not others. Please come up to the microphone on the side, say your name and share briefly your joy or sorrow, and place a stone in the bowl as we hold in community all that brings us together. And for those who are online, please share your joy or sorrow in the chat box. And that one last stone is for the joys and sorrows that are unspoken and live in the wider community. And for all of our joys and sorrows, let us take a moment of prayer. The sharing of our joys and sorrows can help us see that we are not journeying alone through whatever life might be giving us or throwing at us. In our community, we are together, offering support and love to one another. Whether or not we express our feelings out loud, may we know that we are not alone. Blessed be.
My wife, Tyrrell, and I recently moved to the northeast annex of A2U2, otherwise known as Ocean View. Most of the windows in our apartment face east. That's how the light shines in, but there isn't any crack involved. At least there's no physical crack unless you count the slots in the window blinds. And this is good because if we break the windows, we have to pay for them. As we were setting up our new apartment, I knocked a favorite small statuette onto the floor and it shattered. There wasn't any crack involved in that either, just a large mess of sharp little shards. But the smashing of that artwork at least let the light shine in on another that replaced it on the mantel. The statuette, by the way, was a stylized and naked little man. His companion, a stylized and naked little woman, survived. Well, go figure. I also dropped a lamp and broke it. The light didn't shine in that time, it went completely out. But hey, I love those Leonard Cohen lyrics. There is a crack in everything, that's how the light gets in. Now, the spirit of the song speaks to something deeper than broken lamps, and sometimes Cohen's deep and sonorous voice echoes in my mind as I contemplate Tyrrell's affliction with Alzheimer's disease. Now, most of you know about that because we shared the news during Joys and Sorrows some time ago. That's what joys and sorrows are for, of course. Often the joy is the light shining in through the crack, that is the sorrow. Now, one would prefer not having Alzheimer's in the family, but there are ways of coping, of seeing the light shining in through the crack of disease. Some families have pet names for the errors forced by Alzheimer's, and we use the word zing. I'm so stupid, Tyrrell said after I discovered that she had placed 4 boxes of good ice cream in the refrigerator rather than the freezer, so that all 4 flavors had completely liquefied. No, you are not stupid, I replied. That was a zing. It was also a crack, and we found the light by drinking a bit out of each box to see if it still tasted good. It did. And then we got to go out and buy some replacements. However lightly named, those zings can be irritating and challenging for both of us. They are cracks that force us to look for the light and to seek understanding of what's going on. This process can be tough, and we sometimes do growl. Now, a case of Alzheimer's is the story of life writ small. You start off with everything just fine, then you decline very gradually, and eventually you die. But so do all of us, afflicted with Alzheimer's or not. We die. And there's the crack. And where, oh, where is the light? Well, it's on the walls and the ceilings of churches and cathedrals. It's in the scenes of the resurrections and in the stories of the afterlife and reincarnation. Will the light really shine in after death? Well, guess what? We'll all have a chance to find out. In the meantime, we'll know that the crack of death lets light shine in on the beauty of life. Alzheimer's is revealing. As its cracks develop, the light does shine in from time to time. Ask Tyrrell, and she'll tell you that she's usually happy, at least when I'm not trashing her favorite statuettes and lamps. Alzheimer's carries one deeper into self, deeper into past, deeper into places the rest of us cannot see. And Tyrrell seems at peace with the process. It is what it is, she says. Karen Anthony was a close friend and highly involved member of this church who moved through Alzheimer's to her death a few years ago. At her memorial service, I remarked that Alzheimer's had made her both less herself and more herself. Until the very end, when you sat and talked with her and really, really listened, you could still find her happy and friendly self, despite her inability to communicate as she had before. So it is with Terrell. Speak to her and you'll know. Listen to her happy singing in the choir and you'll know even more surely. So it was with Jack Berman, the chief church hugger, who continued his joyful physical connection with everybody here as long as he could get to church. I'm glad he didn't have to live through COVID. It would have killed him. The list in this church goes on to uncomfortable length, but there it is. And let's not despair. There is a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. How wonderful. The crack that seems to mar or even destroy lets the light shine in. I think of opposites in interplay, the theme of joys and sorrows, the wondrous mix of life and death. An image of a light beam shining into a dark room. Do you know that if you Google that image of light shining into the dark room, you'll get 23 million hits? Well, who wants liquefied ice cream? I do. It makes a great drink. There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. So be it.
I'm Susan Selby. Each week, our staff and volunteers create meaningful spiritual experiences. We have religious education programming, spiritual enrichment groups, and a variety of opportunities to create community. The funds we receive support all that we do, and this month, 1/3 will be shared with the minister's discretionary fund. There's a QR code on the back of the program if you want to donate electronically, or you can wait for the plate to go around. If you're online, you can go to our website and use the donate button and indicate it's for Share the Plate. This morning's offering will now be gratefully received. Thank you, Dale. This is my reflection. The cracks are where the light gets in. Doesn't that bring an image to mind? My mind's image is of being in the blackest cave, and in the distance seeing a small jagged crack filled with bright sunlight. But then thinking of the light, the mind leaps. Light can be so much more than light. Light can be psychological. The light creeping in to lift your spirits in a bout of depression. The light of discovery in a relationship or in oneself. It can be spiritual. The light of understanding after days or months or years of confusion and seeking. Seeing the light can be developmental. For instance, the moment you realize as a child, growing into adulthood, that arguing, fighting, and sulking are stupid, and that there are other ways to be in relationship. It can be scientific, a eureka moment when years of study and work reveal an undiscovered truth or invention. I love the story of Dmitri Mendeleev, who was intrigued by elements and their atomic weights. After playing solitaire with his family, he was inspired to write the names and atomic weights of all the elements known in 1869 on cards. He played with them constantly, looking for a pattern. Then, after spending 3 obsessive days of doing this, he went to sleep, and it came to him in a dream, the structure of the periodic table of the elements. Light can be personal. The moment you realize you're in love, for instance, with the brilliance it adds to your life. I'm ecstatic that during these dark times, my daughter discovered the love of her life in someone she's known her whole life. My own personal light through the cracks was realizing well into adulthood that the field of midwifery ticked all the boxes of how I wanted to contribute to the world, and that I could create a path to get there. We have been living in a sort of darkness these last 2 years, in what feels like an alternate universe, strangers in a strange land. I hope that in these times you have had your own moments of brilliance, and the cracks are fracturing open to let the light in.
Hello, I'm Keith Prairie, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. Where does the light enter? It's nighttime. I'm lying on my back on a lawn leading down to Frenchman's Bay. With a few friends, I'm wrapped in a sleeping bag because it's cold. It's December, and the night sky is clear and cold. We often watch the waves moving in from the sea and breaking on the shore, but tonight we're watching the sky with undulating clouds, like vapors, the aurora borealis drifting and surging. It's hypnotic. As soon as one packet of light surges south and fades, another forms. It's like multiple arms of some enormous sea creature in the sky swimming from the north, or a giant crack in the Earth's atmosphere, opening and closing. Where does the light enter? Is it energy coming from the sun? Sometimes it's bright sunshine, and sometimes it comes as a soft caress. It's pitch black again. I'm sitting looking over the stern of a sailboat, anchored in the swelling tides of Puget Sound, and watching the feathery currents as the phosphorescent trail of a harbor seal stirs beneath the boat. I'm drifting with the plankton as the trail fades, a wonder to behold. Is it nature in her element? Where does the light enter? It is in the blink of a firefly, the glow of a luminous mushroom, the birth, hatching, or budding of new life. Wherever light is, it can be traced back to the energy from the sun. Wherever life is, it is dependent on energy from the sun. It is the miracle of light that can become life and feed us. Too much light and we dry up and die. But what is this light that enters us and makes us think of greater things? How do we become thinking and feeling beings with imaginations, thoughts, and creativity? What is love, and does love's energy come from the sun? Are all these places where the energy flows, becoming food and feeding everything, is it love or something bigger? Is believing in love the same thing as believing in God? If the Earth's systems of nature and revolving around the sun is about energy, and love comes from that energy, it could easily follow that God comes from love. And if I believe in the sun and the moon and the earth and have faith in all these systems and balances, then that is my God. So where does the light enter? It comes when I sit quietly and I watch the clouds and feel the wind on my face and am warmed by the sun. It comes with connections to others, and especially connections to people in nature. It's when we sit with each other and nature. The cracks keep us apart, but the cracks close when we're together. We are in and of the earth. And now we are sitting together, and the cracks have closed. So I will extinguish this chalice in a moment. These words by C. Joybell C. The dance between darkness and light will always remain. The stars and the moon will always need the darkness to be seen. The darkness will just not be worth having without the moon and the stars. And as I extinguish this light, and we go our separate ways, we keep the light in our hearts, and although the cracks between us open, when we're together again, the cracks will close. Blessed be.
Thank you.